Hello, welcome to the European Parliament in Brussels for this week's Talking Europe debate. We are now less than 4 months from the next European elections, and while in the past candidates would have been worried about their speeches, TV appearances and leaflets, now the focus is on our phone screens, tablets and laptops. Well, one European Commissioner recently talked about there being a digital arms race as the various players jostle for our attention online and especially on social media. Well, as Facebook turns 15 this month, the social network is talking up its plans to make political advertising more transparent. But it's also been called out by the Security Commissioner, Julian King, for what he called patchy, opaque and self-selecting reporting on its compliance with the Digital Code of Practice. So can we ever go back to the days of more tightly regulated political messaging? Can we ever unfriend fake news and give a new like to facts? Or is the virtual genie now out of the digital bottle? Debating the issue with us today, we have Dutch MEP Marietje Schaak from the Democrats 66 group and the Liberals group here in the Parliament. Hello.
Yes, hi.
German MEP Axel Voss from Angela Merkel's CDU party and the EPP group in the EU Parliament. Hello there.
Hello.
And we have an outside expert as well, Eline Chivot, who is a senior policy analyst at the Centre for Data Innovation. Hello.
Hello.
I'd just like to start off, though, with a look at where Facebook particularly stands as it celebrates that 15th birthday month and how it got us here. This is from Shirley Sitbon.
Facebook, created in 2004. 1 year later, it already had 1 million members, and even then, few could predict it could get as big as it is today. Aged 15, it has 2.3 billion friends. Friends with a lot of valuable personal data, which the company uses for targeted advertising. For critics, that's one of Facebook's drawbacks.
Remember, the business model is stay addicted to the platform, give us as much data as you possibly can, let us sell that data to the advertisers pay us money, which allows you to give you lots of really cool free technology services.
In 2016, a new type of threat emerged. Companies, corporations, or individuals who have used the platform maliciously to spread hatred, fake news, and collect information to manipulate users. Like in the 2016 US presidential election, Senate figures show 126 million users read contents shared by Russian intelligence.
But it's clear now that we didn't do enough to prevent these tools from being used for harm as well. And that goes for fake news, for foreign interference in elections and hate speech, as well as developers and data privacy.
As Facebook hits 15, it plans to keep expanding. Despite critics, it took a record $22 billion profit last year. Reports say it could next merge its smartphone messaging apps, Messenger, WhatsApp, and Instagram. Each one has some 1 billion users.
And I got to say that we did try and get somebody from Facebook on the programme to give their side, but nobody was available for this recording date. So coming back to our guests, Marietje Schaak, I know that you've spoken a lot in the past about foreign interference, and we heard a little bit about that in our report. Facebook launching these new tools with 4 months to go before the EU elections. They want to make political advertising more obvious, basically, who's paid for it, giving special authorizations, disclaimers, showing users that these are adverts, and even having a network of academics deciding what actually counts as a political issue. Does that sound like good news to you?
Sounds like the bare minimum, and it is very late that they're only coming with this now. It was suggested in the clip that, in 2016, the challenges around disinformation and meddling with elections surfaced, but that is not true. We actually warned Facebook and asked them what they were doing to prevent becoming, knowingly or unknowingly, perhaps without their actual intentions, a player in determining who would be the next president in the United States. And so I think the fact that we are now 2 years later, 3 years later, and this is what they're doing, they're providing the kind of transparency on what is a political ad and what isn't, that in any newspaper and on television is already common practice almost everywhere in the world, because nobody wants to be confused about what is a news report or what is an opinion, what is an ad or what is an article, and this is clearly distinguishable everywhere.
Axel Voss, I'd like to get your take then. Germany has actually been the victim of quite a lot of attacks. There's been as much fake news there as there has anywhere else. Do you agree this is the bare minimum?
Yes, I totally
Seems
agree.
like a vast area
Yeah.
of work, though.
Yes, so I totally agree with Marietje. It's fundamental that the platforms has to take more responsibility on what they are doing. They are building the ground for everything what might influence at the end the public opinion, the profiling, etc. And that's why I would share the views also in coming forward. We have to send these signals out. You are responsible, and you have to take care also about where this data are going on and flowing around. And this is, I would say, also a kind of a responsible for the legislator now coming up with a kind of regulation where this might be possible.
It's interesting you talk about responsibility because these are, of course, platforms. They're sort of publishers in a sense, but not even treated legally as publishers. I'd like to come to Eline Chivot, if I may. You know, Facebook says fake news is harmful to our community, it makes the world less informed, it erodes trust. But let's be honest, fake news is designed to be like fast food. It's popular, it's clickable. Every time you get a click, there's money being made by somebody somewhere. Facebook doesn't really have an interest in reducing this, does it?
Actually, I would disagree. I think they definitely want to make efforts, and they've been showing progress, and they don't want to lose the trust of their users. And maybe a couple of things to mention is that last year, within just 6 months, they took down 1.5 billion fake accounts. They've also established a partnership with Germany to sort of educate people on disinformation. And they've also been setting up, or they will set up, an election integrity center in Dublin.
Might perhaps go back to Marietje Schaak's point, though, that this is very late. This is a very, very wealthy company. Do you think that you are seeing this goodwill? That is a lot of accounts that's been taken down, but
if there's 1.5 billion, you said, accounts taken down, and I mean, with every week we learn of more and more millions of accounts being taken down. Imagine, for years there have been ads sold against these accounts, likes coming from these accounts for which people have paid to get boosts, etc. So the main point that I have big issues with is the complete lack of transparency into what their algorithms are doing. There is no oversight. A lot of things we don't know, or we know anecdotally. For example, we've learned last week that Facebook paid teenagers $20 to get access to their phones and the most private information. I think that is criminal, and I really hope that there will be consequences. So I think that the core of liberal democracy is at stake here, the health of our public debate, the freedom to choose on the part of citizens and not to be manipulated and tricked into who they're going to vote for and what they're going to believe.
it's interesting, though, because, of course, when people put their information into Facebook, they're doing that willingly. Nobody's forcing people to put in their various interests, click on the football teams and the music that they like. Are they really being forced? I'll come back to you, Axel Voss.
This is what I already criticized during the data protection regulation, with the reform, what we have done, that we are focusing too much on the consent. I would say the consent is probably a wrong tool now in these days, because no one of us probably is reading the terms and conditions and to the device or to the software or to free
website,
whatever free services, etc. And that's why I would more focus now on how to protect privacy at the end, not to protect the data itself. And there might be a kind of that we have an old idea transformed into a new regulation, and this probably is old thinking, and we should reform this a little bit.
Well, Eline Chivot, you look like you wanted to come in on that point there about privacy.
I wanted to add that another part of the solution also relies on educating people, on raising awareness and digital literacy.
Whose responsibility is that?
It's a shared responsibility, but when Facebook was setting up a digital literacy library a year ago, and it is now available in 30 languages, the European Commission is now taking the step with the first Media Literacy Week, that will take place in March, but it is now. Facebook had been taking action a year ago, and Google has been providing grants to young people to assist them with media literacy and digital citizenship. So this is also something we should not forget.
Media literacy isn't as sexy as fake news, though, is it? But we might have to come back to that another time. I just want to bring in another idea that perhaps goes even further than what you've been talking about. Banning targeted adverts, adverts that use this data where you say which football team you like and that kind of thing. Take a listen to this soundbite. It's from a computer science professor, Nadim Koubaissi, from the New York University in Paris. He was on France 24 on Facebook's birthday a couple of days ago.
Companies can just bid the highest amount on your attention personally based on your demographic, based on where you come from, your age group, the languages that you speak, the kind of job that you have, your income. And what I'm saying is ban targeted advertising, make that impossible. You want to target people based on the kind of platforms that they use. Is someone on social media? That's fine. But the amount of just psychological leverage on that stuff. And by the way, TV ads are much more regulated.
There we go, there's an argument that I hadn't heard before. It sounds very simple, actually, when you hear Nadim Koubaissi say that. Marita Shak, your response?
Yeah, it may be a little bit too broad to say ban it all, because you could argue that advertisement is always targeted. It always aims to sell something. But I think we have good grounds to start with questioning, also legally, whether it should be allowed to target people on the basis of gender, sexual orientation, religion, age, those kinds of very, very personal
Because those are areas that are
one's...
sort of protected under discrimination laws already.
That's right, that's right. Because I could not imagine, but this is probably different in every EU member state, and that's another problem we have to tackle. We need to have one European standard, but I cannot imagine that it would be allowed to single out, for example, gay black women for targeting ads. And in fact, that is precisely what happens on platforms like Facebook, and it goes even further because they can see who has looked up, for example, suicide websites, or who might be mentally unstable. And unfortunately, we've seen that those characteristics have been abused to manipulate people.
Isn't it the bigger point, though, that just a company knowing that much about you and being able to commercially use that data?
That's why
it's a whole new area,
would
isn't it?
think more in this direction and say you have to delete your data after a couple of days or weeks or months or whatever, but then make sure that not everything will be available on and on and on for the future.
A word from Eline Chivot. Surely plenty of companies would just wither and die if targeted advertising was banned from one day to the next.
Well, I know that cases of discrimination are, going through lawsuits and going to court. So I would assume that this is forbidden anyway if discrimination is identified as a driver. Now, I would like to add that this kind of accusations could have been made to television broadcasters when they allowed for some advertisements to be broadcasted at certain times of the day when they would know some particular social class or...
But they don't know exactly
the
the person sitting in front of the TV is a 48-year-old computer scientist who likes beer, cheese, and gardening.
But let's take the example, because I think it is interesting. If you want to go there, of course, television advertising, especially political ones, are regulated, and for good reasons. I mean, you're not allowed to target children a certain way. We just learned that Facebook has. There are many ways in which already media and advertisers and across the board, from newspapers to television to radio, are regulated. And so I believe that there is a lot of foundation to build on in the laws that we have. Because a lot of people are wondering, do we need new laws? It's going to be cumbersome. We're going to regulate against innovation. But that is not the issue. The issue is we have disruption from technology, and it is vast, and it is touching the heart of our liberal democracy. But we also want to be very, very clear about what we do not want to see disrupted. And I think that human rights, fundamental freedoms, non-discrimination, fair competition, free expression are those principles that should not be disrupted.
OK, we're going to have to stop it there, unfortunately. We've only just got time left for our regular fake news fact check, which we do here on France 24. I'd like you to take a look at this. This is inspired by a recent incident in which Britain's former Foreign Minister Boris Johnson denied that he ever mentioned Turkey potentially joining the EU during the Brexit campaign. It's inspired us to revisit this bit of an old chestnut in Fact or Fake. This week's headline is Turkey joining the EU. Well, that is the claim made in 2016 in one of nearly 1,600 pro-Brexit adverts run by the official Brexit campaign, Vote Leave, and two associated campaigns, Believe and DUP Vote to Leave. At the time this advert was produced, Turkey was involved in accession negotiations. And this means it had applied to be a member and was negotiating with the EU. But this process is not a guarantee of membership. Turkey first applied 32 years ago in 1987 to join the European Economic Community. That was the earlier iteration of the European Union. Now, early supporters of Turkey's application were the UK, as well as Italy and Sweden. France, Germany and others were more cautious. However, human rights concerns, a clash over the status of Northern Cyprus, as well as a crackdown on police, on judges and prosecutors, were all issues over the years, and the talks were eventually halted. In March 2016, the European Union wanted Turkey to help stop irregular migration and refugee flows, and as part of a deal, it reopened accession talks. However, Turkey has never progressed from that stage. Also in March 2016, the UK's Economy Minister George Osborne told British TV that he would exercise a veto to stop Turkey becoming an EU member. This claim, however, still circulated on social media and was repeated by prominent Leave campaigners, including the then London Mayor Boris Johnson, who claimed on various TV programmes that it was UK government policy for Turkey to join the EU. Just time for a very quick reaction from our guests. Do you believe that the fight against fake news is being won, starting to be won? Axel Voss?
Yes, so it's starting, but we have to do more and even trying more to not using these for political issues.
Eline Chivot?
Encouraging rapid progress. The Commission has put 5 million euros on the table instead of 2. There can be more.
I think we're only scratching the surface, and there will be a lot more with new technologies like deep fakes evolving. So what is important is that we get into the hood, under the hood, the motor, the mechanism of how these businesses like Facebook and others work in order to have oversight and insight into what is and is not fake news.
All right, still some work to be done. I'd like to thank all of my guests, Marita Schaak, Axel Voss and Eline Chivot. Thank you all for being with us. We'll see you in part 2 of the programme. I'm going to be interviewing Hungary's foreign minister. Do stay with us after the news.
Versailles, the Louvre, Mont Saint-Michel are well-known stars of French heritage. But French genius and France harbours many other hidden treasures. The arts, gastronomy, architecture, as well as nature's wonders. Come along with France 24, discover France's living heritage. From young apprentices to accomplished craftsmen and farmers, to Michelin star sporting chefs. Meet these people whose passion for their professions preserve and drive French heritage.
You are here on France 24 and France24.com.